Humanity's fascination with mysteries. There is something timeless and magnetic about a good mystery, something that captures the human mind and doesn't let go. Whether told beside a crackling fire in the dead of night, inked into the pages of a dusty novel, or dramatized on screen, mysteries speak to an ancient part of us. They stir the imagination, awaken the desire to uncover what's hidden, and grant us a rush of adrenaline that comes not from fear, but from curiosity. But what is it exactly that makes us love them so much? Perhaps it's because deep down we all suspect that there is more to reality than what meets the eye. We're born into a world that seems structured, logical, explainable until it isn't. Until we come across stories that defy rational explanation, a sword forged by hands that shouldn't have known metallurgy, a whispering voice in a dark university corridor, a meteor that may have carried the seeds of alien life, or a weeping woman glowing with unearthly light on an alpine hillside. These aren't just tales. They're questions that have outlived generations. They remind us that not everything can be solved. Some truths are older than science and deeper than logic. Mysteries, especially those that emerge in real life, are not like fiction. They don't come with satisfying endings, a clear villain, or a well-timed reveal. Instead, they linger. They leave pieces behind massive monoliths carved with unknown tools, strange beings with black eyes vanishing into forests, or inexplicable artifacts that rewrite history. These fragments force us to confront our own limitations. For every new discovery, we uncover a dozen new questions. For every ghost story we try to debunk, a new eyewitness emerges calm, rational, certain of what they saw. And yet even when mysteries disturb us, they also inspire us. They whisper that the world is still full of wonder, that behind the curtain of daily routine, something magical might still be hiding. Something ancient, something waiting. In the following journey, we will not merely consume stories, we will visit some of the world's most puzzling mysteries. From ancient monoliths that rival modern engineering to ghostly figures roaming university halls. From cursed swords thousands of years ahead of their time to celestial signs in the sky that suggest life far beyond Earth. These aren't just footnotes in history or tales told by the firelight. They are keys, each one unlocking a door to a deeper understanding of reality. Or perhaps to a realization that not all doors were meant to be opened. So take a deep breath. Suspend your disbelief. The journey begins not with answers, but with questions. Questions older than civilization itself. Are you ready to explore the unexplained? Dui jaila, fan du juok viet, lai than joan, van hoan, chin, dai 450, sekson tu jung fong, kak ke shuyen, huyen biva sao sak. The colossal monoliths of Baalbek, Lebanon. In the heart of modern-day Lebanon lies a city that once bore the name Heliopolis, City of the Sun. Here, in the ancient ruins of Baalbek, rest some of the largest stones ever carved by human hands. Their presence is as haunting as it is humbling. Long before machines, long before steel cranes, these monoliths were cut-shaped and partially moved, with a precision that seems to mock modern tools. And yet even today, we do not fully understand how or why they were created. At the core of the Baalbek temple complex is the grand foundation of what was once a majestic Roman temple dedicated to Jupiter, king of the gods. This temple, intended to rival the greatest shrines in the empire, was anchored by 27 massive limestone blocks. But it is not the temple itself that leaves scholars speechless. It is the trilithon, 3 impossibly massive stones, each weighing more than 1,000 tons, forming the base. To put that into perspective, these stones are heavier than the largest blocks used in the Egyptian pyramids. No modern crane on Earth could lift them with ease, and yet here they are, perfectly aligned, silent and immovable. But that's not where the mystery ends. Just outside the complex lies an even greater enigma. 2 additional monoliths, larger than those in the trilithon, rest abandoned in the quarry, as if the ancient builders themselves gave up trying to move them. One of these is known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a name shrouded in legend. Some say a pregnant woman promised to move the stone if she were fed until she gave birth. Others claim it was the work of supernatural beings jinn-cursed or summoned to drag the rock through impossible terrain. Local belief even holds that touching the stone brings fertility further, entwining it with myth and miracle. Yet beneath this massive block lies something even more astonishing, the Stone of the South, partially buried until recently and weighing a staggering 1,242 tons. It is the largest known stone ever carved by human hands. But no one knows exactly how. No record tells us what tools were used, what techniques were employed, or why they were never moved to the temple. One theory suggests that workers intended to transport them on sledges, using a capstan, a human-powered winch, but underestimated the weight. Others believe the cracked corner of the Stone of the Pregnant Woman rendered it unfit for use, dooming it to rest forever in the quarry, a dream left unfinished. Even the most conservative estimates place the age of these stones around 27 BC during Roman occupation, and yet the techniques required to extract shape and even attempt to move such monoliths are not documented anywhere in Roman engineering manuals. Some have drawn comparisons to other megalithic sites across the globe, suggesting a forgotten civilization or a global knowledge lost to time. Are these the remnants of ancient ambition or something more mysterious? Were these stones the work of a people whose understanding of physics, weight distribution, and geometry rivaled or exceeded our own? Or are they silent monuments to a forgotten technology, one that defies explanation even today? Whatever the truth, the stones of Baalbek remain unmoved, not just in the earth, but in our imagination. The discovery of extraterrestrial protein in meteorites. For decades, we have gazed at the stars, with wonder asking a question older than recorded history. Are we alone? We send probes, scan frequencies, and study far-off exoplanets, hoping for even the faintest sign of life. But what if the answer has already fallen into our hands, quietly, silently wrapped inside a rock that crashed into our planet decades ago? That is exactly the possibility suggested by a remarkable and controversial discovery. Hidden inside a meteorite known as Akfer 086, found in Algeria in 1990, scientists believe they may have uncovered the first known extraterrestrial protein. If true, it would be the first instance of a complex biological molecule not formed on Earth to ever be identified, a molecular whisper from the stars encoded in stone. The meteorite itself was preserved in a museum archive until a team of researchers led by physicist Malcolm McGeoch and backed by the Plex Corporation decided to re-examine it using state-of-the-art techniques. They weren't looking for metal or minerals, they were hunting for the building blocks of life. What they found was something astonishing. A string of amino acids bound together into a new kind of protein structure, one that had never been seen before. They called it hemolythin. What makes hemelithin extraordinary isn't just its alien origin, it's its composition. It includes glycine, a fundamental amino acid required for life as we know it. But this glycine was found bound to iron and lithium, something completely unlike any protein found on Earth. And it wasn't free-floating. It was embedded within the meteorite itself, possibly formed 4.6 billion years ago during the birth of our solar system. The implications of this are staggering. Over the years, researchers have found amino acids and organic compounds in other meteorites, molecules like ribocyanide and even sugars. But these were always basic components. Hemelithin represents something more, a structure, an organization, a process. It's not just chemistry, it's a hint of biology. Naturally, the scientific community responded with cautious skepticism. Some argued it could be terrestrial contamination despite the precautions taken. Others questioned whether the molecules found truly qualified as proteins. But the undeniable truth is this: the hemelithin structure doesn't match anything ever recorded on Earth. It stands apart, familiar in some ways, alien in others. And that leads us to a profound possibility. If complex proteins can form in the cold, chaotic depths of space, if life's ingredients can self-assemble in the void, then perhaps life isn't a rare accident unique to Earth. Perhaps it's written into the very fabric of the universe. Perhaps we are not the only ones who've asked these questions. The discovery doesn't prove that extraterrestrial life exists, but it cracks the door open. It reminds us that the answers we seek in the stars may already be raining down upon us, disguised as lifeless stones waiting patiently for someone to listen. The legend of Prince Harry's true father. Not all mysteries are carved in stone or buried beneath ancient ruins. Some are whispered in palace corridors, written between the lines of tabloid headlines, and debated in private conversations across the world. One such mystery, surprisingly persistent and endlessly sensational, is the question: who is Prince Harry's real father? The theory is not new, and neither is its allure. For years, rumors have circled that Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, might not be the biological son of King Charles III. The speculation hinges on one man, Major James Hewitt, a former cavalry officer and longtime confidant of the late Princess Diana. Their romantic involvement is not disputed, it's a matter of public record. Diana herself, in a rare moment of candor, admitted on television that she had fallen in love with Hewitt during a difficult period of her marriage to Prince Charles. The affair lasted from 1986 until around 1991. It is this timeline that fuels the theory. Prince Harry was born in 1984, 2 years before the reported start of Diana and Hewitt's relationship. But timelines are fragile things, and rumors have never been particularly respectful of facts. The theory gained traction not through DNA or dates, but through appearances. Observers noted the red hair that Harry shares with Hewitt, the similar facial features, the body language. Photographs were juxtaposed. Speculations snowballed. But the truth, at least from those closest to Diana, is less dramatic. Ken Worf, Diana's former bodyguard, dismissed the rumors outright. In his memoir, he wrote that the notion was absolute nonsense. He emphasized that Diana and Hewitt did not meet until after Harry's birth, and that the similarities in hair color could be traced back to Diana's own side of the family, the Spencers, who had many redheads in their lineage. Hewitt himself has publicly denied the claim multiple times. He once told an interviewer that the accusation sells papers, but that it simply wasn't true. "I can absolutely assure you I am not the father," he said, weariness in his voice. "There really is no possibility whatsoever." Still, the story refuses to die. It persists because it touches something deeper than celebrity gossip. It taps into our fascination with hidden truths among the powerful, with the idea that even royal families are not immune to scandal, heartbreak, or secrets. And perhaps it also reflects a cultural yearning to humanize royalty, to view them not as symbols, but as real people with real complications. In the end, whether or not the theory is true almost doesn't matter. What matters is how easily a single thread, red hair, a romance, a photograph, can unravel the story we think we know. The world may never receive a definitive DNA confirmation. But in the shadow of Windsor Castle, this question will always linger like a quiet footnote beneath the official history. And as with many modern mysteries, it's not the truth we remember, it's the story. José Bonilla and the threat of extinction. It was a warm August morning in 1883 when a quiet astronomer, José Bonilla, looked into his telescope at the observatory in Zacatecas, Mexico. He wasn't searching for aliens or omens, he was studying sunspots. But what he witnessed would become one of the most unsettling astronomical observations ever recorded. As he peered at the face of the sun, Bonilla saw hundreds, if not thousands, of strange dark objects moving in formation across its surface. Each object appeared to trail vapor as if encased in some kind of atmosphere. These were not random, solitary figures. They came in waves, synchronized, sweeping across the solar disk like a shadowed fleet from another world. Bonilla did what few could at the time he captured them. With split-second exposures on glass photographic plates, some of the earliest ever used in astronomy, he recorded what we now consider the first photographic evidence of unidentified flying objects. But these weren't your typical UFOs, flashing lights in the sky. They were silent, fast, and frighteningly numerous. At first, theories tried to diminish the mystery. Perhaps they were birds, insects, or debris close to the lens, but no one could explain the sheer number 275 objects observed over just 2 days at an average of 131 per hour. Nor could they explain their coherent directionality or the fact that Bonilla photographed them at astronomical distances, not hovering near the telescope, but moving across the sun itself. Then came a more chilling theory. What Bonilla witnessed wasn't life, it was potential death. Modern scientists revisited the event with new models and terrifying insights. They now believe the objects may have been fragments of a colossal comet, likely the size of Halley's Comet, weighing billions of tons. Something, perhaps tidal forces or solar interaction, caused it to break apart, and Earth had unknowingly passed through the tail end of a shattered giant. The implications were staggering. If even one of these fragments had collided with Earth, the result would have been on par with the Tunguska event of 1908, a meteoroid explosion over Siberia that flattened 80 million trees and released energy equivalent to several nuclear bombs. But Bonilla saw thousands. Had the Earth shifted its orbit by just a few hundred miles, it would have been a global extinction event. Thousands of Tunguskas raining down in mere hours. In astronomical terms, Earth missed impact by a cosmic hair's breadth between 600 to 8,000 kilometers less than the diameter of the Earth itself. Some liken it to a bullet shaving your skull. Others call it divine mercy. To this day, no one knows the name of the comet that nearly ended us. It appeared suddenly, left no record but Bonilla's notes and glass plates, and vanished into the shadows of history. We had no satellites, no warning systems, no way to understand what we had almost lost. And perhaps that is the most terrifying mystery of all. The greatest near-extinction event in modern human history might have already happened and we didn't even notice. The Ulfbert Viking swords, 1,000 years ahead of their time. In the mist-shrouded north of medieval Europe, where battle cries echoed through pine forests and longships prowled the coasts, the Vikings carved their legend with steel. Among their fiercest tools of conquest was a blade that stood apart, sleek, unbending, razor-sharp. Inscribed upon its surface, in bold, mysterious letters, Ulfbert. To the untrained eye, these were just old swords. But to modern metallurgists, archaeologists, and historians, the Ulfbert blades are something else entirely. An anachronism, a contradiction, a riddle forged in fire. Because these blades are not just well made for their time, they are better than any other European weapon produced for the next 1,000 years. Most Viking-era swords, like those from other cultures of the Dark Ages, were made of brittle iron or low-grade steel. Impurities plagued the metal, and their carbon content, critical for strength, was minimal. These swords bent easily, chipped, and dulled quickly. But Ulfbert blades were different. When analyzed, their carbon content is 3 times higher than that of other medieval weapons. Even more startling, they're nearly free of impurities like slag. In modern terms, they're closer to high-carbon crucible steel, a product so advanced it wouldn't be replicated in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. But how did Viking blacksmiths, living in a world without blast furnaces or precision instruments, craft steel of such purity and strength? No one knows for sure. Some believe the Vikings imported the steel from the East, perhaps from Persia or India, where a technique known as Wootz steelmaking may have reached them through ancient trade routes. But no written records, no forges, and no manuals remain. Others suggest the blades may have been the secret work of a small guild of Frankish swordsmiths, possibly in close connection with the church, given the Christian cross embedded into the hilt and the Latin script. Then there's the name itself, Ulfbert. Was it a man? A monastery, a mark of quality? Some say it refers to a bishop or abbot, given the placement of the cross before the name. Others think it was a brand name of sorts, indicating that only elite warriors, those of wealth or royal blood, could wield such a weapon. Of the nearly 170 Ulfbert swords ever found, only 44 have been verified as authentic. The rest are forgeries mimicking the mark, but failing to match the steel's unmatched quality. Whoever forged them, the Ulfbert blades shattered the limits of their era. They cut through not only armor, but also through the accepted technological ceiling of the time. They are relics from the future, hidden in the past artifacts that should not exist. And so they remain one of history's most enduring paradoxes, a weapon too perfect, too advanced, and too mysterious for the age that birthed it. A sword that should not have been yet was. The apparition at La Salette Highs in the French Alps, nestled in a quiet valley of La Salette, something happened in 1846 that would stir the faith and fear of a nation. It did not begin with thunder or angels. It began with tears. 2 children, Maximin Giraud, age 11, and Melanie Calva, age 15, were tending their cattle on the mountain slopes, just as many rural children did in those days. It was an unremarkable September day, sunlit, peaceful, quiet. That silence would soon be broken not by storm, but by the sound of weeping. As the children turned toward the strange sobs, They saw her, a woman bathed in radiant light, sitting with her face in her hands, crying. The woman's clothing shimmered with golden beams, her gown embroidered with roses, and on her chest a crucifix bearing a hammer and pincer symbols of Christ's suffering. Though neither child was especially religious, they felt compelled, drawn as if in the presence of something beyond this world. And when she spoke, they listened. What she told them was not comforting. She spoke of the sins of the world, profanity, disregard for the Sabbath, and the abandonment of true faith. Her voice trembled as she warned that if humanity did not repent, punishment would follow. Crops would fail. Potatoes, then the staple food of rural France, would rot in the ground. Famine, she said, would return, and for those who scoffed at God's suffering would be their harvest. This was no vague prophecy. Just 1 year earlier, the Irish potato famine had begun to grip the European imagination in horror. And in the years that followed the apparition, France itself would suffer crop failures. Some began to connect the dots. Others called it coincidence. But the true mystery lay not in the message, but in the children themselves. Maximien and Melanie were separated, questioned, interrogated. Their answers matched not only in words, but in tone and detail. The story did not change, not under the pressure of bishops, nor the skepticism of the French government which threatened the children with imprisonment. Still they held firm. Something or someone had spoken to them. Something holy. Something that burned itself into their memory. Soon miracles were reported at the site. A spring burst forth, where the Virgin had sat, its waters said to heal the sick. Pilgrims began arriving by the hundreds, then thousands. Attendance at Mass surged, and in 1851 the Catholic Church declared the apparition worthy of belief. A basilica was built, and an entire religious order, the missionaries of La Salette, that was founded to carry her message forward. To this day, La Salette remains a place of pilgrimage, its silence broken only by prayer, its mountains still haunted by that weeping light. Some say the apparition was real. Others say the children made it up. But the message lingers timeless in its warning: when faith is forgotten, suffering follows. Whether you believe or not, one thing is certain: 2 children went up that mountain with cows and came down with a prophecy that would echo through the centuries. Bigfoot sightings in the UK. For decades, the legend of Bigfoot has stalked the misty woods of the Pacific Northwest, its shadow woven into the folklore of North America. A towering ape-like creature walking upright, yet forever elusive. But in recent years, something strange has occurred. The legend has crossed the ocean. Bigfoot, it seems, has found a second home, not in Washington or Oregon, but in the countryside of the United Kingdom. Skeptics scoff. England, the land of tea and stone cottages. It seems unlikely, but the reports are growing, and so are the believers. One such believer is Adam Bird, a 31-year-old investigator with the British Bigfoot Research Organisation. Armed with cameras and a quiet determination, he ventured into a supposed hotspot and nature reserve in Lincolnshire. While walking through the reserve with his team, he couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching them. The woods were dense, the air still. Nothing moved. Yet the silence felt heavy. It wasn't until later, scrolling through the photos he had taken, that the truth, or something like it, emerged. There, behind the tangled brush and tree trunks, stood a dark silhouette upright, still vaguely human. Not quite man, not quite beast. The figure appeared to face the camera, though no facial features were visible. Adam made no sensational claims. "I can't say what it is," he said carefully. but I know what I saw wasn't normal. He is not alone. Another veteran investigator, Deborah Hatswell, has spent years documenting strange encounters with large bipedal creatures throughout Britain. She has even created a map of sightings, plotting accounts from every region of the UK, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and England. The result is, surprising sightings are not rare, nor are they new. From ancient woodland groves to forgotten trails, the reports come from hikers, farmers, and ordinary people who never expected to become part of a legend. But can Bigfoot truly exist on a small, well-mapped island like Britain? The countryside is beautiful. Yes, but it lacks the vast untouched wilderness of North America. And yet every country has its monsters. The woodwoes of medieval English texts, the grey man of Ben Macdui in Scotland, the wild men carved into the old churches. Perhaps these weren't myths after all. Perhaps they were memories distorted, preserved, and retold. What's more unsettling is that many of the UK Bigfoot sightings share common traits: broad shoulders, enormous height, glowing eyes, a terrible smell, and an uncanny silence that falls over the land when the creature is near. Some witnesses speak of being frozen, unable to move. Others say they felt as though their minds were being probed. Unlike their American cousins, these British beasts rarely leave prints, but they leave something deeper, a feeling of being watched, of the world shifting slightly, as if something just out of sight had briefly stepped into it and then vanished again. Are these encounters figments of imagination, echoes of myth, or is there something ancient still walking among us, hiding in hedgerows, haunting the fog, and reminding us that even in the most civilized places, the wild is never far away? The cursed fort of Bhangar. India, tucked away at the edge of the Aravalli Hills in Rajasthan. India lies the ruined fortress of Bhangar, a place where silence speaks louder than words and shadows fall long before sunset. Built in the 17th century by Raja Bhagwant Das for his son Madhav Singh Bhangar, was once a thriving town of palaces, temples, and markets. But today, it stands abandoned, a ghost town wrapped in legend and widely considered the most haunted place in India. No one lives there now. And according to the signs posted by the Archaeological Survey of India, no one is allowed to enter after sundown. The warnings are explicit and the message is clear. Stay away after dark. Two primary legends battle for dominance in explaining Bhangar's cursed fate. The first tells of Baba Balak Nath, a reclusive holy man who lived in the area long before the fort was constructed. The sage allowed the construction to proceed, but on one strict condition: no building could cast a shadow over his cave. If that shadow fell, he warned the city would be doomed. For a while, the condition was respected, but as the fort grew in size and the sun shifted with the seasons, a shadow eventually touched the cave. And when it did, the curse began. Crops failed. Walls cracked. The town emptied as if fleeing some invisible, inescapable force. The second legend is darker still. It speaks of Singya, a powerful sorcerer versed in the black arts, who fell hopelessly in love with Princess Ratnavati, the radiant daughter of Bhangar's ruling family. Knowing his love was forbidden, he brewed a love potion and attempted to enchant her by disguising it as perfume. But Ratnavati, sensing deceit, threw the vial away where it struck a boulder. That rock, enchanted by the spell, rolled down and crushed Singya to death. With his final breath, the sorcerer cast a terrible curse that no one would ever be able to live peacefully in Bhangar again. 1 year later, Mughals invaded and the town was destroyed in a brutal siege. Ratnavati was slain and the town's residents either killed or driven away. Since then, the fort has remained eerily untouched by time, but no one dares rebuild. Visitors report strange occurrences, unexplained shadows, the sound of music from empty courtyards, women weeping, and a boy seen staring from the ruins of a crumbled home. Locals say that anyone who tries to build a roof within the old city finds it collapsing, as if the fort itself rejects shelter. Even during the day, the air feels different, thick, heavy, as if weighed down by history and something more, something watching. Bangar's legends are more than just stories. They're warnings, echoes of a past soaked in jealousy, power, and broken vows. Whether cursed by a holy man or a heartbroken sorcerer, the result is the same, a kingdom lost to the silence, where even time seems too afraid to linger. The Bridgewater Triangle. America's Bermuda, roughly 30 miles south of Boston, Massachusetts, lies a region shrouded in mist and mystery, a place so dense with the unexplainable that paranormal researchers have given it a name as ominous as its reputation, the Bridgewater Triangle. First coined in the 1970s by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, the term describes a roughly 200-square-mile zone encompassing towns like Raynham, Taunton, Brockton, Easton, Mansfield, and Norton. But geography is the least strange thing about this triangle. What it holds within is a stew of the bizarre ghost sightings, cryptids, UFOs, Native American curses, and mysterious disappearances, all concentrated in one unsettling region. At the heart of the triangle lies the Hockomock Swamp, an ancient 5,000-acre wetland whose name means place where spirits dwell in the language of the Wampanoag people. For centuries it was a sacred burial ground. Today it's said to be the epicenter of the triangle's strange energy. Many who enter speak of a crushing silence, a feeling of being watched, and encounters with creatures that defy classification. From giant snakes to thunderbirds, from phantom lights to shadowy figures, the swamp is a theater of the unknown. But it doesn't stop there. One of the most enigmatic relics is Dighton Rock, a 40-ton boulder covered in ancient petroglyphs sitting in the Taunton River. No one knows who carved them. Theories range from Native American shamans to Norse explorers to even extraterrestrials. Then there's Profile Rock, believed by local tribes to bear the face of their fallen leader, Chief Massasoit, and surrounded by reports of ghostly warriors who dance in the fog. And what would a place like this be without UFOs? One of the earliest documented sightings in North America occurred here in 1760, when a strange sphere of light hovered silently over the land before vanishing into the night. In the 20th century, the sky above Bridgewater continued to light up with red orbs, triangular crafts, and mysterious objects that defied radar. Police officers, pilots, and ordinary citizens all became reluctant witnesses to things they could not explain. As if that weren't enough, sightings of Bigfoot-like creatures began emerging in the 1970s. Described as massive bipedal and covered in dark fur, these beings were often accompanied by a foul stench and electrical disturbances. And then there are the phantom dogs, the black helicopters, the disembodied screams, and the strange phenomenon where time seems to slow down or vanish completely. To some, it's a portal. To others, a place where reality wears thin and older, stranger truths bleed through. No official explanation has ever been given, and no one theory has ever satisfied the scale of anomalies reported here. The Bridgewater Triangle remains a place where logic falters, where fear is justified, and where perhaps the veil between worlds is just a little too thin. The hauntings of the University of St. Andrews. In the windswept town of St. Andrews, perched along the eastern coast of Scotland, stands one of the oldest universities in the English-speaking world. Founded in 1413, the University of St. Andrews has survived centuries of change, reformations, revolutions, and the quiet march of time. But something else has remained here too. Something older than scholarship, and more persistent than tradition ghosts. This small university town is often described as the most haunted place in Scotland, and for good reason. According to local law, over 400 spectres are believed to haunt its ancient buildings, chapels, and alleyways. These are not just legends shared during Halloween tours. They are whispered by students, echoed in faculty halls, and occasionally etched into stone. The most famous of these apparitions is the White Lady, an ethereal figure said to drift through the ruins of the old St. Andrew's Cathedral, or sometimes the nearby abbey, clothed in luminous white and crowned with sorrow. Many believe she was once a nun, or perhaps one of Mary, Queen of Scots' ladies-in-waiting, betrayed in love and bound forever to sacred ground. Her presence is not malevolent, but it is chilling. Those who see her often speak of a sudden drop in temperature and a feeling of deep, aching grief that follows them long after she vanishes. But there is another spirit whose tale cuts deeper. Patrick Hamilton, a young scholar and reformer who was executed for his Protestant beliefs in 1528 right on university grounds. He was only 24. Burned at the stake in front of St. Salvator's chapel, his death was slow and agonizing as damp wood struggled to ignite, turning minutes into hours of torment. Today, his initials PH are carved into the cobblestones at the very spot where he died. Out of reverence or fear, students refuse to step on them, believing a superstition that says doing so will cause you to fail your exams. Above the gateway of the university, carved into the stonework, is a strange, weathered face said to be Hamilton's final expression, burnt into history by the force of his martyrdom. Some believe his soul still wanders the grounds, his unfinished mission echoing in the halls he once taught in. There are more, the ghost ship that sails the North Sea, vanishing just before it touches shore. The silent monk who paces in the moonlight near the old Dominican friary, and the lover in the bell tower who lures heart-sick students with her song only for them to disappear from their rooms by morning. With so many legends, one might expect embellishment. But what gives the hauntings of St. Andrews their eerie credibility is their consistency. Generations of students have reported the same sounds, the same sights, the same names. Over 6 centuries, these stories have not faded, they have multiplied. In St. Andrews, the past is not past. It walks, the same cobblestone lingers in candle-lit chapels and watches from Gothic windows. Whether skeptic or believer, every student learns the same lesson here. History is not something you read in books, it might just be standing beside you. The Nebra Sky Disk, an ancient astronomical tool. Discovered in 1999 by metal detectorists digging illegally in the forested hills near Nebra, Germany, a peculiar bronze artifact emerged from the earth, something that would puzzle archaeologists, astronomers, and mystics alike. It was a circular disk about 12 inches in diameter, adorned with gold symbols, a radiant sun or full moon, a crescent moon, and a scatter of stars, including a cluster of 7, unmistakably the Pleiades. Radiating an eerie cosmic beauty, it became known as the Nebra Sky Disk, and it may be the oldest known map of the heavens, dating back nearly 3,600 years to the Bronze Age. Its discovery was accidental, its meaning anything but. The disk defied expectations. At a time when written language was still a rarity in Europe, someone somewhere had created a portable cosmic chart. Not merely decorative, it seemed deliberate, as if used for tracking celestial events, measuring solstices, or synchronizing lunar and solar calendars. Two golden arcs along its edges appeared to mark the exact angles between sunrise and sunset during the summer and winter solstices at that latitude, evidence that whoever made this disk had astronomical knowledge far ahead of their time. But how did they know? Who were they? No written records survive. The disk predates ancient Greece's astronomical texts by over 1,000 years. It predates Stonehenge's alignment theories and the Babylonian star charts. It seems to spring from a lost culture, one whose memory was erased by time, but who looked to the stars for meaning, guidance, and perhaps salvation. Some scholars believe the Nebra Sky Disk belonged to an elite priestly class, guardians of celestial wisdom passed down orally. Others suggest it was used in ritual ceremonies connecting heaven and earth through firelight, shadow, and chant. Then there are those who whisper stranger theories that the disk is a fragment of a lost civilization, older even than we dare imagine, a remnant from a forgotten golden age, when sky watching was not science, but sacred communion. Its symbols remain cryptic. The Pleiades, known across cultures from the Maya to the Japanese to the Aborigines, are often associated with cycles of death, rebirth, and cosmic memory. Why did these ancient people mark this star cluster so prominently? Were they tracking agricultural seasons or something more profound? Spiritual alignments, soul migrations, or portals between worlds? The disk's path through history is as mysterious as its purpose. After being buried with swords and axes, perhaps as a sacred offering, it slept beneath the soil for millennia, only to reappear at the edge of a new millennium, as if waiting, as if meant to return at a time when humanity once again looks upward, searching for purpose in the stars. Today, the Nebra Sky Disk sits behind glass in a museum revered but no longer used. Yet its message remains. Long before telescopes and satellites, human beings stood under the same sky wondering who they were and what lay beyond. And someone once tried to answer with a disk of bronze gold and silent eternal light. The ghostly piper of Edinburgh. Castle high upon the volcanic crag of Castle Rock, the formidable Edinburgh Castle looms like a guardian over the Scottish capital. It has stood for more than a millennium, a fortress of kings and wars, sieges, and secrets. But beneath its ancient stones lies a legend not found in official histories, a tale whispered by torchlight and believed by many, the haunting song of the ghostly piper. The story begins centuries ago when construction workers uncovered a series of underground tunnels stretching from beneath the castle to the Royal Mile, the old cobbled artery of Edinburgh. Curious to see where these tunnels led, the townspeople devised a plan. They sent in a lone piper tasked with walking the subterranean passage while playing his bagpipes. Above-ground citizens followed the music, tracking his progress as it echoed faintly through the stone. For a time, the plan worked. The piper's tune rose like a thread through the city's ancient streets, winding its way downward. But just as he neared the Tron Kirk, the music abruptly stopped, cut off mid-note. Silence fell. Panic followed. A rescue party was dispatched immediately, lanterns in hand, but the piper was never found. No trace of him remained. The tunnel entrances were sealed, and the city moved on outwardly at least, but the song never truly ended. To this day, visitors and guards at Edinburgh Castle still report hearing the faint, mournful wail of bagpipes drifting up from the bowels of the earth. Sometimes at dusk, other times at the dead of night. The sound seems to move beneath the streets as if the piper continues his eternal journey, lost in a labyrinth of stone still seeking the surface. Skeptics offer rational explanations, echoes from distant street performers, tricks of the wind or the suggestible nature of haunted minds. But those who have heard the melody say it carries a sorrow too deep to fake a note of loneliness so piercing it lingers in the bones. Legends around the piper have only grown. Some say he was taken by the Fey folk, lured into another realm beneath the hill. Others claim the tunnels were part of a druidic network and he crossed a threshold he was never meant to find. A few whisper of ancient guardian spirits of the land who punished intrusion with eternal exile. Edinburgh is a city where myth walks hand in hand with history. The veil is thin here. Ghost tours pass by candlelight, but the truly sensitive say you don't need a guide, you just need to stand still, listen and let the city speak. And if in the stillness you hear the low drone of bagpipes rising from beneath your feet, don't be afraid. Just remember he's still playing, still wandering, still hoping someone will follow his song to where he waits deep beneath the castle, lost between time and legend. The Crying Boy painting. A curse in every frame. In the decades following World War II, a curious painting began appearing in homes across Britain. It was mass-produced, easy to find in department stores, and became oddly popular among working-class families. The image was simple, yet haunting a young boy with dark eyes and a tear-streaked face gazing mournfully out of the frame. It became known as the Crying Boy, and for a time it was just another piece of wall decor. Until the fires began. Throughout the 1980s, reports surfaced of house fires that consumed entire homes, walls, blackened furniture, destroyed roofs, collapsed. But amid the smoldering ruins, firefighters would discover one thing, untouched by flame, the painting. Always the Crying Boy, not even singed. The pattern repeated across the country. Over and over again homes were reduced to ashes, yet the sorrowful boy remained unburnt, his eyes staring out from the wreckage as if untouched by time or tragedy. Eventually, British tabloids seized the story. Headlines screamed of a curse of evil lurking in plain sight. Superstitions spread like wildfire. People whispered that anyone who hung the painting in their home invited misfortune. Some believed the boy's tears were not sorrow, but a warning. And then came the backstory, equal parts rumor and occult folklore. According to one version, the child in the painting was an orphan from Italy, whose parents died in a house fire. After being adopted, he was said to bring bad luck to every home he entered, until a priest declared him touched by evil. Other accounts claim the artist Giovanni Bragolin, also known as Bruno Amadio, sold his soul to capture sadness on canvas, so powerfully it would trap spirits within his work. Some went as far as to say the painting contained the restless soul of the boy himself, forever weeping, forever drawn to flame. Terrified homeowners began burning the paintings in public. Newspapers even organized mass burnings to appease the fearful. But the legend only grew. Some who destroyed the artwork claimed their bad luck worsened. A few swore the boy's face reappeared in dreams or reflections. Scientists and skeptics dismissed it all. They noted that the paintings were printed on fire-retardant materials, explaining why they survived the blazes. But this logic failed to account for the sheer frequency and consistency of the reports. It couldn't explain the psychological unease people felt, the sense that the painting watched, waited, and wept, not for its own sorrow, but for yours. Today, the crying boy hangs in museums, flea markets, and private collections. Some dare to display it, claiming immunity to its alleged curse. Others won't even touch it, let alone bring it home. The fires may have slowed, but the legend has not died, because deep in our minds, something about that image unsettles us, not the tears themselves, but the stillness behind them, as if the boy knows something we don't, as if he's waiting for something to burn again. The cursed tomb of the unknown pharaoh. In the golden sands of ancient Egypt, the desert preserves memory better than time itself. Beneath dunes that ripple like silk, thousands of tombs lie buried, some celebrated, others long forgotten. But among all the tales of pharaohs and their sacred resting places, none chills the spine more than the story of the cursed tomb of an unknown king, a ruler whose very name seems to have been erased, not by accident, but by intention. The tomb was discovered not in the Valley of the Kings, but in a secluded gorge far from the grandeur of royal necropolises. Local workers excavating for a new road near an old caravan route stumbled upon a hidden shaft sealed with blackened stone. There were no cartouches, no golden inscriptions, only a warning etched in crude hieroglyphs. Let the silence lie. He walks in death. Of course, curiosity won. When the tomb was breached, archaeologists descended into a chamber unlike any they had seen. It was strangely intact, untouched by looters, yet imbued with an eerie stillness. The sarcophagus bore no name. The walls were lined with figures scratched out violently, as if someone had tried to erase this pharaoh from memory. Even the gods were defaced, an act of heresy unthinkable in ancient Egypt. And then the deaths began. Within weeks of the tomb's opening, a pattern of tragedy struck the excavation team. One man died in a sudden accident and his body crushed under scaffolding. Another succumbed to a mysterious illness doctors couldn't diagnose. A third vanished in the desert, never to be found. Rumors spread that the tomb was cursed, guarded not by the usual protective spells, but by something older, darker, a banishment curse, designed to damn not only the soul of the ruler, but all who disturbed his eternal prison. Some scholars theorized this was no ordinary king. He may have been a heretic ruler, one whose deeds were so monstrous that history itself sought to forget him. Others suggested he was a sorcerer, pharaoh, an occult practitioner who sought immortality through forbidden rites, only to be sealed alive by terrified priests. The artifacts recovered were bizarre amulets shaped like bound tongues, blackened scarabs with inverted hieroglyphs, and scroll fragments written in reversed script. One papyrus fragment hinted at a ritual to bind the breath of kings and spoke of a ruler who walked without shadow. The tomb was quickly resealed, and no formal expedition has returned. Egypt's Antiquities Authority denies its existence. Some whisper it was buried again on purpose, not to protect it, but to protect us. Yet even now, strange occurrences are linked to the site. Electronics fail near it. GPS systems spiral into confusion. Bedouins refuse to approach, calling it the pit of the silent god. and a few believe the unknown pharaoh is not at rest. He was not buried with honor, but entombed as punishment, not to ascend to the afterlife, but to wander forever between sand shadow and suffering. A name forgotten, a tomb erased, and a curse that still whispers through the dunes. The Whispering Skull of Hexham, in the quiet market town of Hexham, Northumberland, where rolling green hills cradle old stone cottages, a haunting legend took root not in the shadowy woods or wind-swept moors, but in a flower garden behind an ordinary home. In 1972, two young brothers unearthed something strange while digging in their backyard, a pair of small human-like skulls carved from stone. Their eyes were hollow, their grins unnervingly lifelike. The children thought little of it at first, but the nightmares began almost immediately. The family began experiencing disturbing events. Footsteps pacing upstairs when no one was there, doors opening on their own, and chilling whispers in the night. Objects moved. The air felt charged electric. But more terrifying was the figure the children claimed to see, a shadowy creature with the head of a wolf and the body of a man glimpsed slinking around the house and peering in through windows. The town quickly dubbed it the Hexham Werewolf. Word of the skulls spread. A local anthropologist took them for study. He declared them ancient, possibly Celtic ritual objects, though their exact origin remained unclear. Some claimed they were witch stones used by druids or cunning folk for binding spirits or channeling energy. But others whispered darker things, that the skulls were vessels designed to trap a spirit or worse, to summon one. Stranger still, once removed from the home, the phenomena followed. The anthropologist who studied the skulls reported poltergeist activity, shattering glass books thrown from shelves, and a chilling sensation of being watched. A colleague who tried to debunk the story awoke one night to find one of the skulls on his pillow, despite locking it in a cabinet the night before. Eventually, the skulls were passed to a museum where they were quietly hidden from public view, not destroyed for fear of releasing what might be bound within, but sealed in an undisclosed vault. Yet even now, no one knows where they truly came from, nor why they were buried in a suburban garden. Some say they were created in blood ritual, carved during a pagan rite to honor the dead or trap a vengeful soul. Others suspect they were crafted in modern times, a cruel hoax perhaps, though this fails to explain the consistent pattern of phenomena witnessed across locations. To this day, locals speak of the Whispering Skull not just as a tale to frighten children, but as a cautionary truth that the past is not always past, and that some objects carry more than just history. They carry presence. And sometimes in Hexham, when the wind moves just right through the stones and grass, people swear they hear it, a whisper without source, like breath on the back of the neck, saying things you don't quite understand, but feel deep in your bones. Something is still listening, and perhaps still waiting. The Lady in Grey of Wemyss Castle. On the rugged coastline of Fife, Scotland, where the North Sea crashes against jagged cliffs, stands a brooding relic of another age, Wemyss Castle. With its ancient stone walls, hidden passageways, and centuries of history, it is the kind of place where whispers seem to live in the very mortar. But among all the legends tied to this ancestral home, none is more chilling or more tragic than that of the Lady in Grey. For generations, castle staff and residents have spoken of a spectral woman draped in silvery grey garments, gliding silently through the corridors. She appears near dusk, or just before a storm, her face pale expression, sorrowful her presence preceded by sudden drop in temperature and the faint scent of wild roses. And when she passes, the air is said to hum as if the stones themselves hold their breath. The legend begins in the 17th century with a noblewoman named Lilias Drummond who was wed into the Wemyss family. Beautiful, refined, and fiercely intelligent, Lilias was caught in the cruel web of aristocratic alliances. Her marriage was not one of love, and whispers tell of her husband's coldness and eventually his betrayal. He fell in love with another woman, and when Lilias became an inconvenience, she was allegedly locked away in a remote tower chamber, where she wasted away from grief, isolation, and despair. Some versions claim she died of heartbreak. Others whisper something darker, that she was poisoned. Her cries ignored her name struck from family records, but her final act before death is what transformed her from victim to legend. Lilias carved her name into the window ledge of the tower, with her fingernails spelling it with blood and bone as a curse upon her husband and his descendants. That etching is still visible today, untouched by time or weather. Not long after her death, sightings began. Servants reported a gray figure walking the halls, pausing at the tower or gazing out over the sea. Some claimed to hear her weeping in the night. Others said she whispered their names, especially if they had secrets. A few guests fled the castle entirely after seeing her face reflected in mirrors behind them. But the Lady in Grey is not always a harbinger of doom. Strangely, she is also believed to protect the innocent, particularly women and children. Visitors have spoken of being gently awakened by a soft touch, only to discover a fire had broken out, or a child sleepwalking near a stairwell. She is sorrowful, but not cruel, broken, but not malevolent. She is a presence that mourns, but also warns. To this day, Wemyss Castle remains a private residence, but even its current inhabitants admit there is something there, something old, something that never left. And sometimes, when the sea mist rolls in and the halls fall silent, they say you can hear her footsteps on the stone, slow, gentle, as if she's still waiting for justice, for peace, or perhaps for someone to finally say her name aloud with love. The Dybbuk box, a spirit trapped in wood. In the dim corridors of Jewish folklore, a few spirits are feared more than the Dybbuk, a restless soul torn from peace that clings to the living in desperation. Unlike ghosts that haunt spaces a Dybbuk possesses, it enters the body, speaks through stolen breath, and feeds on sorrow, guilt, or spiritual weakness. And sometimes it is trapped, not banished, locked away in desperate hope it may never escape. One such prison was a simple wooden wine cabinet carved from dark wood, ornate but unassuming. For decades it passed quietly through hands in Europe until it surfaced in the United States, sold at auction in the early 2000s. The seller, an antique dealer, gave only one instruction: do not open it. But curiosity has always been stronger than caution. The buyer, a young man intrigued by the item's folklore, ignored the warning. Upon bringing it home, he and those around him began to experience a cascade of unexplainable phenomena. Nightmares of a shadowy hag hair falling out in clumps, the scent of jasmine and cat urine drifting through sealed rooms, electronics failing and glass shattering without cause. The cabinet would open by itself in the night. Whispers, guttural angry, were heard near it. Everyone who touched it fell ill or suffered strange accidents. Desperate, the owner researched the box's origin. What he discovered sent chills through even the most skeptical hearts. The box had once belonged to a Holocaust survivor, a woman deeply versed in the mystical traditions of the Kabbalah. She had conducted a ritual described in fragmented Hebrew pages, found inside the box to trap a Dybbuk, a malevolent spirit that had followed her family. The box was never meant to be opened. It was not merely a container. It was a tomb, a cage. Inside the box were items of significance: a lock of blonde hair tied with string, a small goblet, a dried rose and a candlestick, each a symbolic anchor in the ritual of binding. And scratched faintly on the inside lid were the Hebrew words, Shuval ha'afar, return to the dust. As the story of the Dybbuk box spread, so did its legacy of terror. It passed from owner to owner, each experiencing similar torment, until it was eventually sealed in a museum vault encased in a protective chamber and surrounded by salt and holy texts. Some believe it remains active even now, its spirit pacing like a caged beast scratching against the wood from within. Skeptics call it superstition, but those who've seen the box up close, even through glass, speak of a heaviness, a dread that settles in the bones. A sense that something watches, waiting for the latch to click open once more. For the Dybbuk is not gone, only sleeping, and one day someone will forget to be afraid. The vanishing village of Anjikuni Lake. In the frozen vastness of Nunavut, Canada, nestled beside the silent icy waters of Anjikuni Lake, lies one of the most unsettling mysteries of the northern wilds. A village that vanished without a trace. The year was 1930. A fur trapper named Joe LaBelle, a man familiar with the harsh rhythm of Arctic life, snowshoed his way into the Inuit village near the lake, a settlement he had visited before, where he was known by name and always welcomed with warm food and stories around seal oil lamps. But what greeted him that day was a silence so complete it felt unnatural. Not a voice, not a footprint, not a fire burning. The village was empty. Huts stood perfectly intact, doors open to the wind. Furs hung on lines half-dried. Pots still simmered, frozen mid-boil. Food supplies were untouched. Dogs were found dead-starved and tied to posts, despite ample food nearby. Guns and tools, essentials no hunter would ever leave, remained in place. Even more chilling graves in the cemetery had been unearthed, their contents gone. Label fled to report what he had seen reaching the nearest telegraph station, breathless and shaken. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police launched an investigation. They confirmed the strange emptiness of the village, but offered no conclusive answers. No tracks led away from the settlement, no snowshoe prints, no sled trails, no signs of mass exodus. It was as though the villagers had simply disappeared into the air. Theories spread like wildfire. Some whispered of alien abduction, citing strange lights in the northern sky that hunters had long spoken of, dancing fires above the tree line that pulsed and moved against the stars. Others claimed it was punishment from ancient Inuit spirits angered by a broken taboo. The more scientific proposed a mass migration, though the lack of tracks or preparation made this seem absurd in the harsh conditions. And then there are those who believed in a rift, a crack in the world that opened, if only briefly, and swallowed an entire community. The official story was later dismissed by skeptics, labeled an exaggerated tale, perhaps even a hoax. But the locals, those who grew up on the land, never forgot. Stories passed through generations, warned not to camp too close to Anjikuni Lake, especially when the northern lights dance too wildly or when the air feels too still. Elders speak of times when they feel a pulling, a strange weight in the sky, as if something is watching, remembering. Some believe the village still exists in another dimension, frozen in a moment of time, its people unaware that the world has moved on. Others say the villagers were taken not maliciously, but as part of something larger, something cosmic, something unknowable. What is certain is this: no bodies were ever found. No answers ever came. And the wind that howls through Angikuni carries not just snow, but echoes faint and sorrowful, like the voices of people just beyond reach, calling across an invisible veil. The house that shouldn't exist, 455A Prospect Street. In a quiet suburb of New Haven, Connecticut, nestled between neatly trimmed hedges and rows of identical colonial homes, there once stood a house that no one remembered being built. Its address, 4555A Prospect Street. A subtle anomaly, just a single letter added to a known street number, but to those who encountered it, that A became a gateway to something unexplainable. The house wasn't decrepit, nor was it outwardly haunted. In fact, it appeared almost too perfect. Clean white siding, black shutters, a red door that gleamed as if freshly painted each morning. But the air around it buzzed faintly like a low-frequency hum barely perceptible to human ears. And neighbors began to notice something strange no one ever entered or left. Packages disappeared from the doorstep before delivery trucks even arrived. Snow never gathered on the roof. No light ever flickered through its windows, yet those windows reflected things that weren't there. Shadowy figures, impossible angles, skies that didn't match the time of day. One curious resident, a student from Yale, decided to knock. The door opened before he touched it. Inside, the air was warm, almost too warm, like the breath of something living. The floorboards were immaculate, yet slightly uneven, as though the house had subtly shifted since stepping in. He explored cautiously, calling out, but his voice echoed longer than physics allowed. The hallways twisted subtly but surely, curving in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. The rooms didn't line up. Windows looked out onto scenes that weren't New Haven deserts, oceans, cities of spires under twin moons. And then came the mirror. At the end of a long hallway, one that should have intersected the neighbor's yard, stood a tall antique mirror. The student approached and saw himself, not as he was, but as he feared he might become, aged, hollow-eyed lips stitched shut. Behind him in the reflection stood a figure, faceless, dressed in gray, watching. He turned. No one was there. He fled, stumbling through doors that shifted, stairs that elongated, and walls that pulsed like they breathed. When he finally escaped into daylight, the house shrank behind him as if receding from reality. When he returned with others, it was gone. No records of 455A Prospect Street existed in city planning. No photos could be found. Satellite imagery skipped the property, blurring it as if censored. Yet people remembered it vaguely, like a dream or a warning. Years later, strange occurrences happened. Nearby people waking with identical dreams of spiral staircases, of rooms within rooms, of being watched from within themselves. One local psychic claimed the house was a thought form, a construct born of collective trauma or suppressed memory. A house that exists only when it's needed, and always at a cost. Some say it still appears to the lost, the broken, the searching. A trap, or perhaps a test. So if one day you find yourself walking down Prospect Street and notice a door where there shouldn't be one, pause. Look again, and ask yourself what part of you is about to be reflected back. The voice on the baby monitor. It started like any other night. The baby had been fed, changed, and laid gently into her crib. Her parents, new to the strange beauty and exhaustion of parenthood, kept the baby monitor close at hand, its screen aglow with a soft blue image of their sleeping daughter. At first it was just static, the kind of white noise that fades into background comfort. But then came the whisper. Faint at first, a murmur beneath the crackle, indistinct words like someone speaking underwater. The mother turned up the volume, assuming perhaps the neighbor's radio was leaking through, but as the voice grew clearer, her heart froze. "Don't let him in." She stared at the screen. The baby still slept peaceful and undisturbed, but the voice, now distinctly male, calm but laced with urgency, continued. "He's watching from the corner. Don't let him in." There was no one in the room, no movement, no figure in the corner. Just her baby breathing softly in her crib. The father laughed it off. Probably crossed signals, maybe a CB radio or a trucker's mic. But the next night returned, same hour, same tone. Only now it knew their names. Lisa, Mark. He's already in the house. He likes the baby. Lisa unplugged the monitor. Mark tossed it out. The following night, a new monitor, still sealed from the store, was installed. All was quiet until 3:14 a.m. The screen lit up. The baby stirred, and the voice returned. She sees him now. She sees what you don't. The baby sat upright in her crib, staring toward the ceiling, laughing. There was no ceiling fan, no light, just open air and a cold spot that hovered near her head. Mark raced into the room. No intruder, no sound. But on the monitor, long after he left, the camera kept recording a shadow. Tall, unnaturally thin, moving with inhuman slowness across the wall. They brought in technicians. No interference found. No frequencies matched. The monitor was isolated, analog, unconnected to Wi-Fi or external signals. But the voice persisted each night, growing clearer, more commanding. "He's hungry. You made a promise." Lisa began dreaming of dark forests and weeping infants. Mark heard footsteps when alone. Doors creaked open, objects moved. The baby never cried, only smiled, too knowingly. Desperate, they sought help from a local priest. He listened to the monitor face draining of color and offered only this isn't a haunting, it's an invitation, and you've already RSVP'd. They moved, across the country. The baby monitor stayed behind. Months passed. Peace returned. Until one night, checking the baby through the new monitor, they saw her staring at the screen, smiling. And from the speaker, a voice whispered, "Found you." The girl who never slept her name was Alara Quinn, born in a small mountain town in northern Oregon. From infancy, her parents noticed something was off. While most babies cried and slept in cycles, Alara never closed her eyes. Not even once. She blinked, she stared. But sleep in the biological sense never came. Doctors were baffled. They ran tests, scanned her brain, monitored her hormones. Everything appeared normal except for one anomaly. Her brain never produced the chemical patterns associated with sleep cycles. Yet she showed no signs of fatigue, no irritation, no hallucinations. Only a growing stillness, a gaze that pierced too deep as if she were listening to something no one else could hear. As she aged, things grew stranger. Alara never yawned, never dreamed. But she knew things she shouldn't. She would speak of people who had died decades before in vivid detail. She would describe events from distant places as they happened, fires, crashes, deaths. Once she told her mother that the moon is crying because Mr. Alvarez just died in his kitchen the very moment their neighbor suffered a fatal heart attack. By age 9, Alara was no longer attending school. Not because she was disruptive, but because she frightened the teachers. Her presence was too calm, too knowing. One teacher resigned after Ilara recited a word-for-word transcript of a private conversation she'd had in her locked office, whispered in the dark during her lunch break to no one. Ilara's parents sought spiritual counsel. One priest, upon meeting her, wept, not from fear, but from what he called an unbearable silence that emanated from her being. A psychic refused to enter the house after peering into Ilara's room, muttering that her aura was not of this world, or perhaps not of this time. By adolescence, Ilara spoke less and listened more. She began to write symbols, hundreds of them, in spiral patterns, never repeating. Some matched ancient languages, others were unknown. When questioned, she simply said, "They speak when the world sleeps, and I'm the only one who hears." She never grew tired, never fell ill, never raged like the other children. At 17, she looked 12, her skin pale, her eyes dark-rimmed, but never tired. One night, she walked into her parents' room and whispered, "He's waking up beneath the mountain. You'll hear the hum." The next morning, residents of the town reported a low-frequency vibration pulsing through the earth. Animals panicked. People fell ill with migraines. Then silence. Ilara vanished. Her room was untouched except for the mirror. Upon its surface, scratched with one of her fingernails, were 4 words, "I'm still not sleeping." She has never been found. Some say she wasn't human. Others claim she was a sentinel placed among us to listen to record what we cannot perceive. And a few believe she walks the world, still eyes wide open, watching as we sleep, carrying secrets we were never meant to wake up to. The sobbing statue. It began as a trickle barely noticeable. The small statue of the Virgin Mary, nestled in the side chapel of St. Aloysius Parish in rural Pennsylvania, had always drawn quiet reverence. Crafted from alabaster, with eyes cast downward and hands folded in solemn prayer, she stood watch over generations of the faithful. But on a humid August afternoon, a parishioner noticed something odd, a glimmer beneath her eye. At first, Father Donnelly dismissed it as condensation. The chapel, after all, lacked proper ventilation, and the air was thick with incense and age. But the next morning, the glimmer had become a tear, then 2. Then a slow, unbroken stream down her pale cheeks. Word spread. The faithful gathered. Pilgrims arrived. Cameras flashed. The tears were real, clear, saline, and unexplainable. The church dispatched investigators. The statue was examined for hidden tubes, moisture pockets, chemical reactions. Nothing. The tears did not match the humidity patterns. No one had tampered with the structure. And most eerily, the tears only flowed at night when no one was present, leaving trails visible in the early morning light. And then came the sobbing. It started faint, like the sighs of a woman lost in prayer. But by the 3rd week, a low, mournful weeping could be heard echoing softly through the chapel after midnight. Parishioners began staying overnight, praying beside her, hoping to witness a miracle or an answer. Some heard whispers. Others felt sudden chills, as if the sorrow in the room had weight. One woman claimed the statue turned to look at her. Another fainted upon touching its feet, screaming, "She's grieving for what's coming." Father Donnelly, once a man of rational faith, began keeping vigil. One night, just before 3 a.m., he heard her voice. It wasn't in English, nor Latin, but he understood. It spoke of children lost of truth, buried of a darkness approaching, cloaked in light. He collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by a grief not his own, a grief that felt cosmic, ancient, maternal. Then came the photos. Dozens of visitors captured images of the statue. In some, her eyes appeared blackened, hollowed. In others, light surrounded her head like a crown. But one photo, never released publicly, showed a shadowed figure standing just behind her hand, resting on her shoulder. Tall, masculine, smiling. The Vatican intervened. The chapel was closed. The statue removed under cover of night. The official report claimed environmental anomalies, faulty plumbing, and mass hysteria. But the town remembers. Locals say the chapel hasn't felt the same since. Cold drafts move through closed doors, candles blow out during prayer, and sometimes if you press your ear against the altar wall, you can still hear it. A woman crying, softly, endlessly. Some believe Mary wept for the sins of mankind. Others think something else was speaking through her, something ancient, using the image of purity to mask a deeper mourning. One thing is certain, you cannot unhear the sobbing once you've heard it. It echoes, it follows, and it asks, without words, what have we done? The boy in the photographs. It began as a curiosity, then became a terror. In 1998, a traveling photographer named Carl Wexler began documenting abandoned buildings across the American Midwest. His portfolio was gritty, bleak, and eerily beautiful. Derelict hospitals, collapsing barns, empty schools. But as he developed his film, real analog film, in his home darkroom, he noticed something deeply unsettling. A boy. He appeared in the background of a photograph taken inside a burned-out asylum in Michigan. Small, pale, maybe 10 years old. Wearing outdated clothes, suspenders, collared shirts, scuffed boots. He wasn't there during the shoot. Carl was certain, but there he was standing in the hallway looking directly at the lens. He dismissed it as a double exposure, until he found the boy again in the next batch, this time inside a church in Ohio, seated in a pew, hands folded. Once again, eyes locked on the camera. No other tourists or intruders were seen that day. The building had been locked. Still, Carl chalked it up to photographic error or prank, but the boy kept appearing. Dozens of photographs. Different states. Different buildings, always in the background, often partially obscured, but always staring directly at the lens. Carl grew obsessed. He blew up the photos, analyzed facial details, cross-checked angles. The boy never aged, never changed clothing, never blinked. He reached out to colleagues, sent samples for expert review. No signs of tampering. One digital expert stated flatly, "He's in the negatives. That means he was there, or something was." Sleep eluded Carl. Nightmares followed. In them he would walk through abandoned buildings, camera in hand. But the halls would always end at a single door. He'd open it, and the boy would be there sitting in the dark, whispering, "You brought me here." Then came the real-world encounters. Carl began seeing the boy outside of photographs, once in the mirror behind him, another time reflected in a puddle after a storm, once in the middle of a parking lot, no cars, no people, just the boy staring, then gone. Carl tried to burn the photographs, but the negatives wouldn't burn. When he tried to digitize them and delete the files, his computer crashed. A tech retrieved the hard drive and found that every file had been overwritten with one image, the boy's face zoomed in, pixelated, and smiling. Eventually, Carl stopped taking photos altogether. He disappeared in 2003. His apartment was abandoned, his cameras left behind except for one Polaroid tacked to the wall with a rusted nail. It showed Carl sleeping in his own bed, and the boy standing at the foot of it. The photo had no timestamp, No signature, no explanation. Just one word scratched into the corner, written in a child's hand. Thanks. The drowned village that still breathes. At the bottom of Lake Dalhousie, under 120 feet of cold. Still water lies the forgotten village of Elberton, a town, erased not by war or disease, but by progress. In 1962, a government hydroelectric project demanded a reservoir. Elberton, once a thriving hamlet of 312 souls, was chosen to be sacrificed. The residents were evacuated, homes dismantled. Bodies from the cemetery were allegedly exhumed and relocated. Then came the flood. Water filled the valley, swallowing everything: the schoolhouse, the chapel, the town square. But some say Elberton didn't die. Fishermen who drop anchor near the lake's center often report hearing strange sounds from below church bells, soft and muffled as if rung underwater. One diver in 1987 surfaced, gasping with panic. He claimed he saw lights down there, warm, flickering candlelight behind the sunken church windows. And then, movement. He never dove again. In the decade since, whispers of Elberton's unrest have grown louder. Swimmers report being pulled under despite calm conditions. A woman once claimed to feel fingernails grazing her ankle while floating. When she screamed, her child swore they saw a hand reach out of the water behind her, pale, long-fingered, then gone. Locals say that on nights of the full moon, if the wind is still and the fog rolls low, you can hear footsteps on gravel, the echo of a choir singing, and the rhythmic knock of a wooden spoon on an iron pot, as though someone somewhere beneath the surface is still cooking supper. Paranormal teams have attempted dives. One group returned with footage too dark to decipher, except for a single frame, a face pressed against the lens of the camera. Lips, blue eyes, wide open hair, floating like seaweed. The caption they later added to the file: she smiled. In 2010, a sonar scan revealed that many of the village structures remained intact. Even more disturbing, the report noted subtle anomalies, pockets of warm water, rhythmic disturbances, and air bubbles that seemed to rise in perfect time, like breathing. An old woman in a nearby village, one of the last survivors of Elberton, now nearly 100 years old, broke her silence only once. When asked if she missed her hometown, she simply whispered, "It's not gone. It's just waiting." When pressed further, she added with a vacant stare, "We made a pact. We were never meant to leave. They still hold us to it. Even now. Every year, a wreath is found floating on the lake's surface. No one sees who leaves it. It never drifts to shore. And when pulled from the water, the flowers are fresh, still beaded with morning dew. The guest who wasn't on the guest list. The wedding was a perfect until they looked at the photos. It had been a joyful night. Friends, family dancing under string lights in a vineyard tucked deep into the California hills. The bride Ava glowed in white. The groom Michael wept as she walked down the aisle. The laughter was real. The wine flowed. Everything felt touched by grace. No one noticed the man, not during the ceremony, not during dinner, not even in the group photos. But he was there. The first clue came 2 weeks later when Ava's cousin posted a slideshow of candid shots on social media. In one image taken during the first dance, a tall man in the background stands deathly still while everyone else moves. He wears a charcoal gray suit, face partially shadowed, head slightly tilted. No one recognized him. More images surfaced. In one, he appears behind the bridesmaids, too close, yet no one turns to look. In another, he's seated at a table, hands folded, staring directly at the camera, though the photo was taken from across the courtyard. Panic set in. The couple reviewed the venue's guest log. No such name, no extra plate served, no footage of him entering. Yet he appeared in over a dozen photos, never blinking, never smiling, always watching. The photographer, a seasoned professional, swore he hadn't seen him once. It's like he was only in the prints, not in the moment, he said, visibly shaken. Things got worse. Ava started having dreams. In them she walked back down the aisle, but this time everyone was gone. Empty seats, no music. Only the man in the grey suit at the altar, arms open, eyes black. She began sleepwalking. Michael found her at 3 a.m. one night, standing on their balcony in her wedding dress, still sealed in a garment bag, until that very night. Her eyes were closed, yet she whispered, "He said I made a vow to him first." Desperate, the couple sought help. A local priest blessed their home. A medium visited and instantly asked, "Who brought the mirror?" They were confused until she pointed to a framed mirror at the reception venue used for guests to leave lipstick messages and signatures. The couple had bought it at a vintage store just a week before the wedding. The mirror was traced back to an estate sale. Its previous owner, a man named Elias Gray, a recluse who had crashed a wedding 40 years prior and died shortly after. Alone, still in his suit, clutching a torn invitation not addressed to him. The mirror was removed, burned, and buried. The dreams stopped. The man vanished from future prints. But to this day, if you stare long enough at the photo of the first dance, in the far right corner, in the shadow behind the vines, you can still see him, just watching, waiting. The signal that wasn't from Earth, at exactly 03:17 a.m. UTC on August 9, 2024, the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia picked up a signal. Not just any signal, a patterned transmission repeating every 19 seconds, sustained over 11 minutes, and unlike anything ever logged. At first, the astronomers believed it was a pulsar, a dying star emitting radio pulses. But then the pattern changed, becoming recursive. Contained within the frequencies, they discovered mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci spirals, binary palindromes. Not random, deliberate. Then came the anomaly. When researchers ran the signal through spectrogram analysis, the waveform began to form shapes, not just noise graphs, but glyphs, symbols never catalogued before. One linguist described them as mirror-inverted Sumerian with fractal recursion. One physicist simply said, "It's trying to say something," or "remind us of something." The real terror came when someone reversed the audio. In the backward playback, filtered and cleaned, a human voice emerged. Clear, calm, genderless. It spoke in English. "You are not the first. You're not alone, and you will not be warned again." The signal ended abruptly. Within hours, satellite weather systems went haywire. A minor meteorological event over the Indian Ocean, an innocuous thunderstorm briefly expanded into a perfectly symmetrical cyclone before vanishing in seconds. Auroras were spotted over the equator. Then things turned personal. The research team, 12 scientists, each reported identical dreams that night. A black ocean, a silver monolith, a ringing sound like a bell underwater, and a feeling of being watched by something without eyes yet older than stars. 3 members resigned. 1 was institutionalized. The government stepped in. All public records of the signal were scrubbed. Officially, it was labeled equipment error, but insiders leaked fragments. Amateur astronomers continued to search for echoes. They found nothing. But in remote parts of the world, shortwave radio operators began catching brief anomalies. Bursts of static that, when slowed down, produced low droning voices, whispering the names of the original research team one by one. 5 of them are now dead, all under unusual circumstances. The surviving lead scientist, Dr. Lena Mora, went dark in 2025. Months later, her abandoned journal surfaced online, its final entry reading, "We were a signal too. Life itself is a broadcast, a flicker between vast silences. Something has heard us, and it is answering." The journal ends with one final phrase scrawled over and over across 3 pages. "Not from Earth. Not from Earth. Not from Earth." The whisper between stories. They say stories end when the last word is written. But what if stories are doors, not destinations? Each tale you've read was not just ink and imagination. It was a knock, faint but insistent, on the edge of your consciousness. You let them in. You followed. And now you wonder, were they just fiction, or did something slip through while I wasn't looking, somewhere a child stares too long into a corner where shadows refuse to behave? A bride glances at a photograph, and her smile slowly fades. A forest breathes in silence, growing just 1 tree closer to your fence each night. And beneath a still lake something stirs, not dead, not dreamy, simply waiting. You've seen their eyes. You've heard the static. You've felt the air grow colder even though the window's closed. These stories don't end. They latch on. To your memory, to your doubts, to the silence between footsteps when you walk home alone. So tonight, as you turn off the lights and slip under the covers, if you hear a soft tap at your door or a whisper that knows your name, don't answer. It's probably just the next story looking for a reader.